I had been avoiding it for years. The thought of stepping into that cold, silent cemetery made my chest tighten and my hands tremble. But today, I couldn't run anymore. My brother, my only brother, had been gone for 3 years, and something inside me whispered that I needed to see him one last time. The sky was a dull gray, the clouds heavy as if they knew the secrets buried beneath the earth. I parked the car and walked through the iron gates, the hinges creaking as if groaning under the weight of my guilt. Each step on the gravel path felt heavier than the last. When I reached his grave, I froze. The fresh flowers I had brought trembled in my hands. Something was off. The ground around the tombstone was disturbed. Not freshly dug, but as if someone had been standing there, waiting. And then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the shadows, a reflection of my grief. But no, there he was, my brother, pale and hollow-eyed, standing just a few feet away from his own grave, staring at me. His lips didn't move, but I could feel his gaze piercing through me, calling me closer, whispering something I couldn't understand. A cold wind swept through the cemetery, carrying with it a whisper of my name. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, trapped between fear and disbelief. He raised a hand, slowly, deliberately, and that's when I noticed the dirt on his shoes, fresh dirt. Fresh dirt. Someone, or something, had just come out of his grave. I blinked, hoping it was a trick of my mind, a cruel hallucination brought on by grief. But he didn't disappear. My brother was real, or at least, something that looked like him was. His eyes, they weren't the warm, familiar eyes I remembered. They were empty, black voids that seemed to swallow the light around them. I don't understand, I stammered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. He took a step closer, and the air grew colder. My breath came out in misty clouds, and the hairs on my arms stood on end. The cemetery felt alive somehow, like it was watching me, waiting. The crows in the distance screeched and took flight, their cries echoing through the grey sky. Then came the whispering, soft at first, barely there, but unmistakable. My name, over and over, from all directions at once. The sound didn't come from his mouth, but from the shadows surrounding the graves. I wanted to run, to scream, to escape, but my feet wouldn't move. It was as if something invisible was holding me there, binding me to the earth. Why are you here? I managed, my voice cracking. He tilted his head, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the boy I used to know, smiling faintly. But then the shadow returned, stretching across his face, twisting it into something unrecognizable. And then I noticed it. Behind him, the ground of his grave shifted again. Not a tremor, but a slow, deliberate rising. A shape, rising from the soil. Something clawed its way up, dragging itself out of the darkness beneath. I wanted to turn away, to hide my eyes, but I couldn't. My brother, or what looked like him, turned to look at it. And then, in a voice that was not his, he whispered, "You shouldn't have come." A hand, pale and dirt-streaked, broke through the earth, and with it, a darkness that seemed to breathe and pulse with life, filling the cemetery with a suffocating presence. My legs finally moved, backwards, away from the grave, but the shadow followed, stretching impossibly fast across the ground, reaching for me. I stumbled and fell, my heart racing. The whispering grew louder, turning into a chorus of voices, each one speaking in a language I didn't know, but every word carried the same chilling meaning: stay, forever. And in that moment, I realized my brother hadn't been waiting for me to say goodbye, he had been waiting for me to join him. I scrambled backward, the gravel cutting into my hands, my knees, but I couldn't escape the presence that filled the cemetery. The shadow that had risen from the grave seemed alive, writhing like a black, oily mist, reaching out with hands of darkness that made my skin crawl. My brother, or whatever he had become, stood perfectly still, watching me. His eyes, those empty voids, were fixed on me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My throat felt frozen, as if the air itself had turned to ice. The shadow writhed closer, coiling around the gravestones like a living river of darkness. And then I noticed it, the ground around his grave was moving again. Slowly, deliberately, something was emerging, clawing its way up from the soil. Not just hands this time, but shapes. Faces, twisted, screaming faces buried for decades, maybe centuries, all reaching out as if calling for release. I realized with a sickening certainty that my brother hadn't died in the usual way. Something had taken him, something that lived in the space between life and death. And now it wanted me. A cold wind swept through, carrying whispers that I could almost understand. Join us, stay, forever. I forced myself to look at him again. My brother's lips moved, but the words weren't his own. "You should never have come here, it's too late." Then I saw it, on his chest, faint but unmistakable, a symbol carved into his skin. It glowed faintly, black as tar, pulsating with a terrible light. The same mark was on the faces rising from the grave, linking them, binding them together in some unholy network of suffering. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to my feet and ran, stumbling past gravestones, my lungs burning, my heart hammering. The shadows followed, moving unnaturally fast, slithering along the ground as if alive. I could hear the whispers all around me, chanting my name in 1,000 voices. I reached the gates of the cemetery and threw myself against them, but they wouldn't budge. The black mist surged around me, and I felt cold hands grab my ankles. I screamed, kicking and pulling, but the more I struggled, the tighter its grip became. And then I felt it, my brother's hand on my shoulder. I froze. The familiar warmth I remembered was gone, replaced by a cold, unnatural weight. His hollow eyes bore into mine, and I could hear that same terrible voice whispering through him, "Welcome to the family." A sudden flash of light blinded me, and when I opened my eyes, I was inside the grave itself, or at least, something that looked like it. The walls of earth surrounded me on all sides, pressing in, suffocating. The faces of the dead stared from the soil, their mouths moving in silent screams. My brother knelt beside me, his hollow eyes softening for the briefest moment, almost human, before the shadow surged through him again, consuming him, and I realized that the boy I had loved was gone forever. And then the whispers became louder, more insistent, as I felt the earth begin to pull me down, deeper, into the darkness that had claimed my brother, and now wanted me. The earth swallowed me whole. Cold, wet soil pressed against my skin, seeping into my clothes, into my bones. I tried to scream, but the sound died in my chest. Darkness was everywhere, thick, oppressive, alive. The whispers had grown into a roar, 1,000 voices screaming in a language I couldn't understand, yet I felt every word vibrate through my very soul. I could see him, my brother, faintly, kneeling a few feet away. His hollow eyes met mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw him crying. But then the shadow surged through him again, twisting his face into something monstrous, and I realized the truth: he wasn't my brother anymore. The thing that had taken him was not satisfied with merely occupying his body. It had claimed him entirely. Why is this happening?" I whispered, my voice trembling as my hands clawed at the dirt. But no answer came. Only the whispers, now chanting, pulling me deeper. Suddenly, I was no longer alone. The faces in the soil, countless, twisted, screaming, shifted and turned toward me. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths agape, but I could feel their hunger, their longing. They reached for me with hands of dirt and shadow, dragging me into the earth. And then I understood, this was no ordinary graveyard. It was a gateway, a prison for the lost, the dead, the ones who had been consumed by this darkness over the centuries. My brother had stumbled into it, and I had followed. I fought, kicking, clawing, but the more I struggled, the stronger the grip became. My body was pulled downward, downward into the cold, suffocating soil. The whispers became a deafening chorus: "Join us, stay, forever." In the darkness, I felt a flicker of warmth, my brother's hand brushing mine. His touch was cold, but strangely familiar. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and I realized that somewhere, deep inside that hollow shell, he was still there, trapped, screaming silently. Panic turned to desperation. I clawed at the earth, trying to reach the surface, gasping for air, praying, screaming. The faces in the soil were everywhere now, pressing against me, whispering promises of death and oblivion. And then, a voice, clearer than the others, commanding, ancient, cut through the chaos: "Stop fighting. You belong here." My vision blurred. My hand sank into the mud, into the roots and bones of those who had come before me. The shadow surged, stretching tendrils of darkness into my chest, my mind, my very soul. I felt it trying to consume me entirely, to erase me, to make me one of the lost. And then, I felt something else. A spark, a memory. My brother, laughing, alive, real. That memory flared, burning through the darkness like a fragile candle. I screamed his name, and for an instant, the shadow faltered. The faces recoiled, the whispers faltered. I realized that the only thing keeping me tethered to my humanity was the memory of love, of life, of the brother I had lost. But the darkness wasn't done. It lunged again, relentless, ancient, and I knew, if I didn't fight harder, if I didn't hold on to that spark, I would be gone. I clenched my fists, focusing on that memory, that warmth, that tiny flame of hope. And as the shadow's grip tightened, I screamed louder than I ever had in my life: "Leave me alone." For a moment, everything stopped. Silence, darkness, the graveyard, the whispers, the shadow, all paused. And in that terrifying, fragile stillness, I realized something chilling. The darkness wasn't just trying to take me, it was testing me. Testing whether I was ready or already lost. The darkness waited, patient and ancient, like a predator savoring its prey. I could feel it pressing against my mind, seeping into my thoughts, whispering promises of oblivion that sounded almost comforting. My lungs burned, my body trembled, but I forced myself to stand, though the ground beneath me was shifting, trying to swallow me whole. My brother's hollow eyes were fixed on me, and for a moment, I thought I saw recognition flicker in them. Not the boy I knew, but something of him, buried beneath the shadow that had consumed him. "You can leave," he whispered, his voice faint, broken, almost human. "But you have to choose. Fight or surrender." I didn't need to think. My body moved on instinct, fueled by desperation and the raw will to survive. I wrenched free from the shadow's grasp, tearing my hands through the soil, dirt and roots clawing at my skin. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, mocking, pleading, accusing. Faces in the soil twisted, mouths open in silent screams, eyes hollow and hungry, reaching for me. And then I saw it, a faint glimmer of light, barely visible beneath the grave of my brother. A crack in the darkness, pulsing with warmth, as if the earth itself was breathing hope. I lunged toward it, dragging myself across the wet, cold soil, ignoring the hands that tried to pull me back. The shadow screamed, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard, deep, resonant, and filled with hatred. It reached through me, trying to snuff out the memory that tethered me to life. I felt it, the tug, the pull of despair, threatening to erase me entirely. I shouted my brother's name, clinging to the memory of him alive, laughing, human. The memory flared, brighter than the crack of light. The shadow recoiled, writhing, howling. I pushed forward, hands raw, fingers bleeding from the soil, until my chest broke through the surface of the earth. Air. Sweet, cold, real air. I gasped, lungs burning, heart pounding. I pulled myself out completely, coughing, shivering, drenched in mud and sweat. The cemetery stretched around me, silent and grey, but something had changed. The shadow was retreating, for now. My brother stood at the edge of the grave, his form flickering between the boy I remembered and the hollow-eyed creature the darkness had made him. He opened his mouth, and this time I heard his real voice, "Go, before it comes back. Don't look back." I stumbled backward, falling, scrambling toward the gates. The whispers had quieted, but I could still feel their hunger beneath the soil, waiting. I didn't stop running until the cemetery was behind me, the iron gate slamming shut with a final, echoing clang that felt like a warning. Even then, I knew it wasn't over. The darkness had tested me, and I had survived, for now. But the memory of my brother, lost yet present in the shadows, would haunt me forever. I could feel it every time I closed my eyes, every time I stepped near a grave, every time the wind whispered my name. And deep in my chest, I knew the terrible truth: some graves are not meant to be visited, some dead are not meant to be remembered, and some shadows never let go. I ran into the night, but the whispers followed, just beyond hearing, just beyond sight, promising that one day, I would have to return. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in my room seemed alive, whispering my name. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows, carried the faintest echo of the cemetery, the hollow voices of the dead, and the weight of my brother's gaze. I had survived, but at what cost? Days passed, or maybe weeks, I couldn't tell. Time felt fractured, warped, like the world itself had been altered by what I had seen. The memory of the darkness clung to me, a second skin I couldn't shake. And then, one night, I felt it, a pull, gentle at first, then insistent, like the earth itself was calling me back. I tried to resist. I ran. I locked doors, blocked windows, but nothing worked. The pull was inside me now, in my bones, in my blood. And then I saw him, my brother, standing at the edge of my vision, just beyond the shadows. His hollow eyes were empty, yet full of warning. "You have to come back," he whispered, his voice layered with both him and the darkness that had claimed him. "It's not finished. You saw too much, now it wants you." I knew then that the darkness wasn't just a thing, it was a force, ancient and hungry, and my brother had been its first victim, not its last. My mind raced, trying to remember everything I had felt in that graveyard, the faces, the whispers, the light beneath the soil. There had been a crack, a tiny spark of hope. Could it be enough? The ground trembled beneath me. Shadows coalesced into shapes, creeping along the walls, across the floor, stretching toward me like living smoke. And then the earth split open. No, not the earth, the air itself seemed to tear apart. And I saw it, the gateway. The darkness, massive and writhing, pulsing with every face it had ever consumed. And in its center, the hollow figure of my brother, reaching for me, silent tears streaking his pale cheeks. You can fight it, he said, the human part of him screaming through the shadow. Remember who you are. I did. I closed my eyes and summoned every memory of him alive, of us together, of laughter, of warmth. I thought of my life, my fear, my hope, and for the first time since I had touched the grave, I felt a pulse of power, tiny, fragile, but mine. The darkness surged, roaring like the ocean in a storm, clawing at me, trying to drag me into the void. But I held on to the memory, the love, the light. My brother screamed, a sound that was both him and the shadow, and the gateway wavered, the edges trembling like a flame in the wind. I reached toward him, not the shadow, but him, the boy I had loved. My fingers touched his, and for a fleeting moment, he was real. Not consumed, not hollow, just him. And then, with a surge of will I didn't know I had, I pulled. The shadow shrieked, twisting, writhing, trying to resist. Faces screamed from all directions, the whispers became a thunderous chorus, but the memory of my brother, the bond we shared, burned brighter than anything it could throw at me. I pulled with everything I had, my body straining, my soul screaming. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. The cemetery was gone. The shadows were gone. My brother, he was gone too, but not hollow, not consumed. Just gone, leaving only a faint warmth in my chest, a reminder that he had survived the darkness in some way, or perhaps that he had saved me. I never returned to that cemetery. I never spoke of what happened. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers just right, I feel the pull again, faint, almost gentle, and I remember the darkness, the faces, the whispers, and the spark of hope that saved me. Some doors, once opened, never truly close, and some shadows, never truly leave. Months had passed since that night, the night I had escaped the darkness, the shadows, the grave. Or so I thought. Life continued in its fragile, ordinary way, sunlight, traffic, the hum of everyday life. But beneath it all, I knew something had changed. The world had cracks I could feel, and in those cracks, the whispers lingered. It started subtly. At first, I heard my name on the wind, soft, almost tender. I dismissed it as my imagination, but the whispers grew louder, insistent. Sometimes in the mirror, I could see shadows flitting across the corner of my vision, too fast to catch, yet unmistakably there. And sometimes, when I slept, I felt the weight of hands on my chest, pressing, guiding, warning. One night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my window, slow, deliberate, echoing in the darkness. My heart pounded. I looked outside, and there he was, my brother, or at least, something that looked like him. Hollow eyes, pale skin, and that faint, terrible glow in his chest where the shadow had once lived. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice shaking. His lips didn't move, but the voice came, his voice, yet not his, layered with the darkness. "You survived, but the darkness remembers, it waits, it watches, it never forgets." A cold wind swept through the room, carrying whispers so loud they filled my mind. Faces emerged in the shadows of the walls, countless, twisted, silent mouths opening in unison. I realized then that the darkness had never truly left. It had merely retreated, waiting for the right moment to test me again, to pull me back into its grasp. My brother, or what he had become, reached toward me. For a fleeting moment, I saw the boy I had loved, alive and warm, smiling faintly, and then the shadow surged through him, twisting his body, his face, his very presence into something alien, horrifying, unnatural. "You can't escape it," the voice said, layered with 1,000 others. "We are patient. We are eternal, and one day, you will belong to us." Panic surged, but I fought it. I forced myself to remember the light beneath the grave, the spark of love that had saved me before. I focused on the memory of my brother, laughing, alive, holding my hand. That memory flared like fire, pushing back the shadows just enough for me to step away. But the shadows didn't vanish. They merely paused, biding their time. I felt them in my chest, in my bones, whispering in 1,000 voices, "Soon, soon, soon." I ran, through streets, through alleys, through my own home, trying to escape. But even as I ran, I knew it was useless. The darkness had already touched me, it had left a mark deep inside, a tether I could not sever. My brother's hollow eyes haunted my dreams, the whispers filled every silent moment, and the shadows lingered just at the edge of my sight, patient, eternal, waiting. And in the darkest corner of my mind, I understood the truth. I had survived the grave, yes, but I would never be free. Not truly. The darkness was part of me now, a living, breathing entity, coiled around my soul, whispering promises and threats, eternal and patient. Some nights, I still hear my brother calling, real yet unreal, somewhere between life and death, his voice layered with whispers, "Come back, you belong here," and I know, deep down, that one day, I might have to Because shadows, once awakened, never sleep, and some graves never truly remain closed. I had thought that distance, time, and distraction could protect me. I was wrong. The darkness had learned patience beyond human comprehension. It didn't chase me in the way I expected. No, it waited in the corners, in reflect irons, in whispers on the wind, always watching, always testing. Every night, I felt it pressing against the edges of my mind, and every night, I saw him, my brother, half light, half shadow, staring from the void of my memories. The first sign came on a rainy evening. I was walking home when the street lights flickered and died. The world went grey, then black, and there he was, standing in the middle of the road, wet, pale, and smiling faintly, but wrong in every way that made my skin crawl. "You shouldn't have survived," he whispered, though his lips didn't move. The shadows around him writhed, reaching toward me like snakes made of darkness. "And now, you're part of it too." I ran. My feet slipped on the wet asphalt, heart hammering like it would burst from my chest. The shadows followed, crawling along walls, stretching impossibly long, climbing lampposts, coiling around cars. Their whispers filled my head with 1,000 voices, a chorus of hunger, of malice, of something ancient and endless. When I reached my apartment, I locked every door, every window, every barrier I could. But it didn't matter. Shadows slithered under the doors, around the frames, pressing against the glass as if trying to remind me the darkness cannot be contained. And then came the visions. Not dreams, but flashes, moments of the grave, of my brother kneeling in the mud, of faces screaming from the soil, and of that terrible crack of light I had clung to. Each vision lasted only seconds, but they burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back there, pulled into the earth, dragged toward the shadow. I understood then the terrible truth. The darkness wasn't just a force, it was patient, eternal, and it learned. It had tested me once in the graveyard, and now it was trying again in the world above ground. It wanted to break me slowly, to mold me, to tether me to the shadow in ways I couldn't escape. One night, unable to endure the pressure, I followed the whispering. It called me to the edge of the forest, to a clearing I didn't recognize. There, the air shimmered like heat over asphalt, though the night was cold. The soil rose in unnatural hills, and the shadows thickened, writhing like a living mass. And in the center, my brother stood, or what had become of him. "You are ready," the darkness said through him. His voice was layered with hundreds of others, ancient and hungry. "You can resist, but only for so long. The shadow is patient. It waits for eternity, and you will join us eventually." I felt the pull stronger than ever. It reached inside me, tugging at my memories, my thoughts, my soul. The faces from the grave appeared in the shadows, screaming silently, calling me to kneel, to surrender. I felt myself falter, my mind fraying under the relentless pressure. Then, I remembered the spark, the light beneath the grave, the memory of my brother alive, the warmth of love that had saved me before. I concentrated on it with every ounce of strength I had. The shadow screamed, recoiled, and for a moment, I felt control again. But I knew this was only temporary, because the shadows never sleep, they never forget, they never forgive. And my brother, trapped between life and death, between the human and the hollow, waits, patient, eternal, to pull me back into the darkness that has claimed him. I ran from the clearing, my chest burning, lungs screaming for air, and I didn't stop. I can't stop. The whispers follow me wherever I go, in every reflection, every shadow, every moment of silence. And sometimes, just at the edge of vision, I see him, my brother, half human, half shadow, waiting. The terrible truth haunts me. I survived the grave, but the darkness didn't fail. It's inside me now, patient, waiting, whispering. And one day, it will claim me completely. And when that day comes, I will join the shadows. But until then, I run. I have been running for what feels like an eternity. Days, weeks, months. Time has no meaning when the shadows follow you relentlessly, whispering promises of oblivion in every quiet moment, in every corner of your mind. I can feel it in me now, deep in my chest, coiling around my heart, threading through my veins like black fire. It is patient, always patient. The whispers never stop. They are louder than ever, now almost intelligible. They call my name, pleading, mocking, laughing, demanding. And through them, I hear him, my brother, or what remains of him, always just beyond my vision, waiting. Sometimes I see his faint glow, pale and flickering, standing silently in the distance, as if beckoning me to return. I cannot escape. One night, unable to bear the weight any longer, I stopped running. I found myself at the edge of an abandoned church, its roof caved in, windows shattered. The whispers grew louder, resonating in the hollow structure, swirling like a storm of shadows. And there he was, my brother, Or rather, the thing that had once been him, kneeling in a pool of darkness that spread across the floor like liquid night. "You have to let it in," he said, his hollow voice layered with hundreds of others. "You can resist, but only for so long. We are eternal, and you are ours." The shadows surged from him, flowing like smoke, twisting, reaching, pulling. I could feel the cold fingers inside me, probing, testing, claiming, tugging at my memories, my soul, the very essence of who I am. And yet, a spark remained. The memory of my brother alive, laughing, warm. The memory of my own life before the grave. The tiniest ember of hope. I screamed, and the spark flared into a burning light, cutting through the shadows, illuminating the horror around me. Faces twisted in anguish and rage appeared in the darkness, countless, ancient, trapped in the soil of graves I had never seen. They screamed silently, clawing at the air, reaching for me. And yet, I stood, holding on to the memory, holding on to the ember of life that still remained. "You can fight, but not forever," the darkness whispered, through him, through the thousands of voices. "Eventually, all light dies." I realized then the terrible truth. The darkness does not simply consume, it waits, it toys with its prey, it tests patience beyond comprehension. My survival had always been temporary. Every step, every breath, every memory was a battle against inevitability. And one day, I would falter. He rose from the pool of shadow, and for the briefest instant, I saw the boy I had loved, warm, human, alive. And then the darkness consumed him again, twisting his face, hollowing his eyes, spreading its black tendrils outward like a living storm. "You belong to us," he whispered, the last trace of human voice swallowed by the chorus of shadows. I felt it wrap around me, pulling tighter than ever. I struggled, clawing, fighting, screaming, but the darkness is infinite, patient, eternal. My heart raced, my mind screamed, my soul burned, and I understood fully, resistance is only temporary. Escape is an illusion. The shadows are infinite, patient, and merciless. Yet, I am still here. For now, because the ember of memory, the love, the hope, the spark of life, still fights within me. The darkness recoils, waiting, watching. And I know that it is only a matter of time before it returns fully, to claim what is inevitable. I run through the night. I hide in the shadows. I hold on to life, however fragile. But I know the truth that terrifies me more than the shadows themselves. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some graves, once disturbed, never remain silent. And some shadows wait for eternity to finish what they began. I do not know if I will survive the next encounter. I do not know if I will ever see the light again. But one thing is certain, the whispers never stop, the shadows never sleep, and the darkness always remembers, because one day, it will come for me.